Recently, I got an email from a listener who asked me if I require my kids to go outside and what that looked like exactly. I wrote her back and I told her, absolutely. I force my children to go outside, and I am going to do a podcast about that. So, that is what this podcast is about. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Raising Arrows podcast. I'm Amy Roberts from raisingarrows.net, and this is episode number 171, Make Your Kids Go Outside. As I said, this was an email from a listener. And by the way, if you send in emails to me asking questions or telling me things that you'd like to hear about on the podcast, I am more than happy to try to address that. It actually gives me ideas for what you would like to hear. So I was super excited about this question because anybody who knows me, and of course, if I asked my kids the same question, do you make us go outside? They would absolutely be like, yep, mom makes us go outside. And here's all of mom's catchphrases that she uses to force us to go outside. I have some children who don't like to be outside, shockingly. And then I have some kids who would spend all their time outside if I would let them. And it's really odd how I can have both in one family. But here are some of the things that I feel like are super important reasons why kids need to be outside. First of all, vitamin D. Get it from the sun. It is the best source possible. And I'm always telling the kids, go get some sun on your head. So that's mom's number one catchphrase is go get some sun on your head. I want their heads uncovered. I want them out in the sun. I want at least 10 minutes on their bare head. I really want them to be outside for at least 20 minutes. However, that's just a start, and we'll talk more about that here in a moment. The 20 minutes is just a start, really. It's not the ending place. I really want them to spend as much time outside as possible. But when you have a child who is just not interested in being outside, 20 minutes is a good place to start. And just tell them, listen, you need some vitamin D on your skin, you need it on the top of your head, go outside, get some vitamin D. Now, they may be wondering, why do I need vitamin D? Well, there's lots and lots of reasons why kids need vitamin D, and you can absolutely Google those and figure that all out and figure out which ones you need to tell your children. But a couple of things that are super important to me is the immunity that it gives your kids. So you can simply tell them, do you like to have a cold? Well, getting vitamin D helps you to not get a cold, not feel as sick if you do get a cold. It's super important. And yes, you could chew up a little vitamin D pill and get your vitamin D that way, but it's not as effective and as efficient as the sunlight is. Another reason I'm really big on vitamin D is because of how helpful it is with mental health. I actually had blood work done on me when I was having a really difficult time mental health wise. My vitamin D was in the tank. So if you are getting your kids vitamin D, they're getting outside, their mental health is going to be better. It is a proven fact that the vitamin D from being outside and that sunshine really, really helps to keep their minds sharp, to keep them healthy, to keep their bodies regulating the way they need to. The Amish actually have a saying about how being out in nature keeps them closer to God. I think that is also absolutely true, and another good reason to send your kids out into nature, outside, out in the backyard, the front yard, take them to a park, whatever it is you need to do to get them in touch with the natural world that God created. Digging in the dirt, touching plants, smelling the outdoor air even, running around, exerting energy, all of that builds into your child a sense of peace and groundedness and their place in this world, and how awesome and wonderful our Lord is to have created this playground for us. I would encourage you to check out the podcast 1,000 Hours Outside and even try your own version of 1,000 Hours Outside if you are struggling to get your kids out of doors. As homeschooling families, we have a unique opportunity to get our kids outside more than they could ever possibly be outside as public schooled or private schooled individuals. Because they're home all day, we can homeschool outside, we can send them outside whenever we need to, and they are going to be healthier for it. So take advantage of that. But if you're struggling to figure out what that looks like, or you're struggling to just be motivated to do it, 1,000 hours outside is a really great place to start. Another saying that I have is look far. And I actually got this from Marcia Somerville, who wrote the Tapestry of Grace curriculum. She was always telling her kids to go outside and look far. And one reason for this is because we become very myopic when we stay inside doing schoolwork all day. Everything is right here, including the screens that this generation seems to endlessly be on. You need your kids to go outside, pick a point way off in the distance, and stare at it. Ask them to tell you about what's in the trees over there. What do they see on the hill over there? What can they see the farthest? And really encourage them to use their eyesight farther than what they're doing when they're inside the house. Screens are wrecking our children's eyesight, and we really need to be proactive about having them look far. Okay, so I briefly shared with you my kind of timeline to get them started, and that's 20 minutes. If you don't think your kids will do 20 minutes, do 10. 10 is better than nothing. If you have a really introverted, indoorsy kind of kid, you may have to find something that spurs them on to get them outside. Maybe they're a bookworm, and you could send them outside with a book and tell them to sit out in the sun for 10 minutes, and then they can move to underneath a tree. Maybe you just need to send them out with a shovel and a bucket and say, dig in the dirt and put it into this bucket, and then here's some flower seeds. You might need to get them interested in different things that might help them to want to be outside more often. One of my children has created a pretend restaurant outside that she calls Farm Fresh. And basically she's using potting soil and some pots that are out there that we aren't using this year for different plants that we have on the deck. She has just created this little place where she digs in the dirt and she throws walnuts in and anything she can find from the ground and the trees, and she serves it to us in her restaurant called Farm Fresh. And that has been the catalyst for her to spend more time outside. Now, my children are such that once it gets over about 75, yes, 75, they do not want to be outside anymore. They hate the summer. And so what I have to do there is make sure that they go outside in the morning. And then a lot of times they'll go back outside after the sun has sunk behind the trees so that there's not direct sunlight on them. They are all pretty fair-haired, fair-skinned. They burn pretty easily, and they're light-eyed, which can sometimes cause issues with the sun and how much it bothers your eyes. I know it does for me. I have to wear sunglasses everywhere I go. And so I understand. I'm not going to force them to do things that are very uncomfortable, but I still want them to be outside. So in the morning when it's cooler and in the evening when the sun is not glaring down on them, they are perfectly fine with going outside. It's also very helpful if you have some equipment like a bike or a little trampoline or balls or a frisbee to have for them to play with outside. It gives them something to do. It's also very helpful if you have neighbor kids that you trust and families that you enjoy to be around, because your kids are more likely to spend time outside if they have friends also outside playing. So I mentioned in the summer, my kids don't like the heat, so morning and evening are good times for that. In the winter, you kind of have the opposite problem. You don't really want to send the kids out in the morning because it's still quite chilly. You can bundle them up and send them out there, but it might be a good idea to wait until you are at the heat of the day, which is usually around 2 o'clock in our neck of the woods. And then I can send them out. They enjoy spending the whole afternoon out there. If there's snow on the ground, they are doing all kinds of things with the snow. They're packing it in. They're making their little restaurants out there with different snow treats. And they just really enjoy being outside in the cooler weather. So fall and spring are fantastic times of year for our family. Summer, not so much. And winter, they really enjoy being out then too, unless it is just bitterly cold. So for us, summer is an issue, but maybe for your family, summer is the time when you get the most hours outside. And so I'd encourage you, if it's another time of year that you're not getting those hours, what can you do to help your children get outside more often during the winter, during the fall? Fall and spring are a great time for nature walks, by the way. I have several posts, one about keeping a nature bag, one about autumn homeschooling and what that looks like, and how to implement that nature into your homeschool so that you're actually spending more time out of doors with your children. I also really encourage you to make outside time before screen time. In order to get more outdoor time, maybe you need to bribe them with some screen time and basically tell them you can't be on the screens until you've been outside. And maybe it's even a 1-to-1 ratio. If you're outside for 10 minutes, that's how much screen time you get. Because remember, that outdoors time is really helping their mental health. It will combat any of the bad stuff that's coming through the screen that's actually depleting their mental energy. And so if they're outside, maybe you could make it a 1-to-1 ratio, or just make it a rule that they have to go outside before they can come in and use any sort of screens. Another way as homeschool parents that we can encourage outside time is to actually have school outside. There are lots of curricula out there that implement nature-based activities for math, reading, just taking nature walks. Charlotte Mason was really big on nature walks with your kids, getting kids out of doors. And so you might look into some of those types of curricula to help you come up with ideas for getting outside of your house and getting your kids out in nature more often. You will also benefit from being out in nature as well. It's helpful for mom's mental health to be outside too, so don't neglect that either. One thing real quick that I will mention from 1,000 Hours Outside is that every year they put out these grids that you can color in for each hour that you spend outside. This can be a really good incentive, especially for younger children, to try to color all of those blocks to show that this is how much time they've spent outside. And so you might want to pick up those. Those are totally free, I believe, on the website, the 1,000 Hours Outside, and you can grab those. We hang ours up on the wall, and then as they spend an hour outside, they get to color it in. And it just kind of is a good reminder to get outdoors, because then we get to color it in. And it's just a nice little incentive. So the short answer to this question, do I make my kids go outside? Yes. Yes, I do. And I think you should too. Again, if you have other questions for the Raising Arrows podcast, please send them my way at amy@raisingarrows.net. This is your home for all things large family homemaking and homeschooling. And so I want to be able to answer the questions that you have to the best of my ability. I hope you have a wonderful day. Please go spend some of it outside.